to Spoiler Piece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Megan Kearns. My pronouns are she, her. I write film reviews for Edge Media Network. I'm a co-host of the Slashers podcast. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and a member of Gallica, the Society of LGBTQ Entertainment Critics.
My name is Dave Riedel. My pronouns are he, him. I write for the Chicago Reader, and I'm also a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
And my name is Evan Crean. I'm co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s movie guide to better living. My pronouns are he, him.
All right. Well, guys, I missed you for the past 2 weeks. I was away.
Missed you too.
Vacation. Oh,
Yeah.
Thanks.
Glad you're back.
Thank you. I was on vacation and it was pretty fabulous. I was in Disney World and it was great. I was riding rides, eating lots of food.
What did you call it when you go to the park before it opens? Ribbon dropping?
Oh,
or
rope dropping.
Rope dropping. You were rope dropping.
I rope dropped every single time. Every time I went to the park, I rope dropped because I am a weirdo who likes, actually, I'm not a weirdo. There's actually quite a few people who go early in the morning.
It makes sense.
Get on the bus at 6:30 in the morning.
Yeah, if you've ever been to Disney before and you know what the line situation is like, especially depending on the time of year you go,
exactly,
then it makes a lot of sense. I would imagine, though, that between Thanksgiving and Christmas, I know that Christmas is their busiest time of year, and we used to go at Christmas every year. I would imagine that it's a little bit calmed down.
Yeah, so usually the week I go with my my roommate, we always go, and the week we pick usually is a quieter time, but not this year. This year it was busier, but we were there for 11 days. The following week was a quieter week, so we did get a couple of slower days.
Good, very good.
Thank you. But yeah, but I am now ready to talk about movies, and we're going to be talking about a couple movies tonight. But before we get into that, if you're a patron, go check it out. Our weekly exclusive audio for patrons for $5 a month. This week, we did something a little bit different. We did some recommendations of TV shows as well as a couple of video games and a book. And yeah, we wanted to talk about some of our favorites since we're coming to the close of 2023. So go check that out. And if you're not a patron, consider joining.
Ooh.
Yeah. So this week we have 2 movies. We're going to be talking about Anatomy of a Fall, and we're going to be talking about All of Us Strangers. And we're going to kick things off with Anatomy of a Fall, a film by Justine Triet. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I may not be. And it's starring Sandra Hüller. And this won the Palme d'Or at Cannes. And here is the synopsis from the press release. For the past year, Sandra and her husband Samuel and their 11-year-old son Daniel have lived a secluded life in a remote town in the French Alps. When Samuel is found dead in the snow, the police question whether he was murdered or committed suicide. Samuel's suspicious death is presumed murder, and Sandra becomes the main suspect. What follows is not just an investigation into the circumstances of his death, but an unsettling psychological journey into the depths of Sandra and Samuel's conflicted relationship.
That seems, that's all accurate, but a little verbose, even for a press release.
Yeah, they often are.
Yeah.
All right. So let's kick things off. Evan, what did you think of this?
It's been a couple weeks since I watched it, so it's a little less fresh in my mind. But I definitely found it to be a compelling story and premise, and particularly when we get to the courtroom scenes, which I think take up a good chunk of the movie. Once she's on trial for murder, and it can get pretty intense in there. Like one of the scenes that really got me is when the I think he's the psychiatrist or the therapist who was working with her husband basically is saying all these awful things about her and the relationship and his interpretation of who she is and her motives and everything, and he's just allowed to just stand there and say all these expository things about her that just are now entering the record, and it's just oh my god. But I also find it interesting that in their court system, you can like respond directly to people, like the witnesses and things. It's not like the same here where it's like you have a strict line of questioning, like, but I think at the same time, it can be extremely damaging. Like you have someone like that with a potential axe to grind, like his therapist saying all these nasty things about her. And it's like, he's just allowed to just keep talking, you know? So that was particularly tough scene. And, the relationship with her son, the way it kind of like becomes extremely uncomfortable as the trial wears on, and the scene later on where he's talking to the social worker, because listeners, what happens is, because she's still living with her son, but her son's like kind of a material witness in the case. They have a social worker that comes there that basically acts as like a barrier to prevent them from like talking about the case, so the mother can't influence the son's like testimony or anything. And just like as the case is kind of like wrapping up, he's like, I don't want to be around my mom, so she needs to like leave. And like it's just like the social worker has to have the awkward conversation where it's like, oh yeah, your son like doesn't want to be around you, you should probably like leave.
Yeah,
there's just like some really uncomfortable scenes in this movie. So I found it really compelling. I'm trying to like, I feel like I liked it but didn't love it, and I'm starting to feel a little fuzzier about some of the stuff that wasn't quite working. Like I think it was a little slow for me, maybe a little bit long, but well acted, I thought. Sandra, how do you pronounce her name? Hüller.
Yes, Dave,
I
you're
thought
more accurate.
yeah, she gave a just incredible performance. I thought the kid was also really good.
Really good.
Yeah.
What's Milo Mikado Grainer? He was really freaking good, and especially when he's like having to like confront. He's like trying to like talk to the social worker, like, I don't know whether to believe that she's innocent or not. And he's like asking the social worker to like tell him what he should land on. And she gives that answer where it's like, you just need to like make a decision, basically. You just need to decide whether she's guilty or not, and just like lean into that. And since the spoiler piece, he decides that she's not guilty. And like leans into that interpretation. And here's where I feel like we can get into more spoiler territory. Do we feel like that conversation he gets on, he gets on the stand and gives or tells about this story about how like his father seemed like he wanted to kill himself, and that's why he almost certainly jumped.
Well, he did poison his dog to try to see whether he was right or not.
Yes, he did.
So this is somebody who had quite a conviction about it.
Yeah.
Whether that's influenced by the social worker or not, I don't know.
Sorry, I feel like because I'm a little fuzzier on it, it's been a little while since I've seen it. I couldn't remember exactly what the order of things was, but yeah, it's like he has the theory is floated that the father had depression and was just so disappointed with how his life turned out that he just like kind of gave up and decided to kill himself. And the son, because they tell a story about how like the wife found him one morning like in a pool of his own vomit. He clearly like threw up a bunch of pills, like maybe he tried to kill himself and didn't take. So yeah, the kid poisons his dog in the same way to see if that theory is accurate, because the dog, he was pretty sure, ate the vomit with the pills in it and was like all messed up. So he was like, I'll just try and recreate what happened and see if the dog acts the same. And it's really sad and messed up scene when the kid like poisons his dog to test this theory. But it does seem like that's what happened. So he's like, okay,
well, I think,
all right.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I think he was poisoning the dog with the intention that he was going to, I think in that moment, he decided his mother was guilty and he was going to poison the dog. And he thought, if nothing happens to the dog, then I'm correct. My mother's guilty. But then the dog did get poisoned in the fashion which his mother relayed in court. And I think that's why he's so fucking freaked out when the dog is like at death's door, because he didn't expect that.
Right. I agree. I don't think he was expecting the dog to get sick.
Right. I think that he wouldn't. He loved that dog so much. I don't think he really would have done that had he thought the dog would
Right.
become ill. Do you disagree, Evan? I'm sorry. Did I interrupt you?
No, I don't think he was planning for the dog to get that ill, and he definitely got freaked out by it. But yeah, it's sad to watch though. It's like you see him like feeding the dog, and you're like, oh no, what's happening? Oh no, the dog is really sick. Like, please don't kill the dog. Please don't kill the dog. Oh my God, please don't kill the dog.
Right.
The dog does not die.
The dog lives.
Yes. Thankfully, the dog lives, and the kid decides to lean into his mom not being guilty by telling the story. Whether did you guys believe the story, or do you feel like he made up the story to make it kind of clean so that it was just like, okay?
What, on the way to the vet story when they were in the car?
Yeah.
That's a pretty big story for an 11-year-old to make up. I don't know.
Yeah, I believed the story. Whether or not he fully believes that his mother's innocent, I don't know. I question that still, but as far as his belief, but yeah, no, I believe the story that his father and he had that conversation.
Okay. So, what did you guys think? I feel like I ran out of stuff, and I might think of more stuff as we talk about it. But
Dave, I want to hear what you have to say, because you said you wanted to talk about, you had a comment about the French legal system.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
How fucking bizarre is the French legal system? That's my comment. Like, can you imagine the things, even in the crazy movies that we have where lawyers are pontificating and things like that? Like, if you've ever been to court, it is so not
so boring.
Yeah, it is so not what is portrayed in movies and TV. Like the first season of Law and Order, when Michael Moriarty was the DA or the assistant DA, is more accurate than anything else. And My Cousin Vinny is very accurate too, for that matter. But anyway,
yes.
Oh, it definitely is.
To see the prosecution and the defense not just objecting and this and that, but speaking directly to each other, and the way that the lawyers, now I don't know how accurate it is when you actually like go to a French courtroom, but let's just assume that this movie is relatively accurate, because the movie itself is really highly regarded, right? So I think the thing that blew my mind more than anything is the twisting and turning and extrapolating these lawyers do from the flimsiest of fucking details, and how these things get drawn out. They're like, oh, so she must have felt this way. And it's like, what? How did you get from point A to point fucking M? Like, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
Or how about the ridiculous biphobic shaming of her because she's a bisexual woman?
God, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah,
I mean, that could have happened in an American courtroom, though, too.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think she's not guilty. So I think she didn't do it. Megan, you think she did it?
I didn't even say anything.
No, but your face just kind of went blank, and I was like, oh, Megan thinks she did it.
I actually do think she did it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
But here's what's funny about that. Here's what's really, really interesting. And I think what's really interesting about Sandra Hüller's performance is that apparently she kept asking Justine Triet, did my character do it? Is my character guilty? Is she innocent? And she would never answer, which is kind of brilliant because, we don't know as an audience. We never really get a definitive answer. So I think that's what's so thorny and tricky about this film, and why I think the acting and I think the writing is really exceptional. I think this is a fantastic screenplay that Justine Triet wrote with her partner, Arthur Harari. And I think what's so great about it is that you just don't know. Mm-hmm. You never know. There's so much duality and nuance and complexity and everything. And you can read into every single situation. Like, oh yeah, she did it. No, she didn't do it. And I just think that makes for a really compelling courtroom drama. But I think it's also really interesting in how the court case not only that unfolds, but how we see their relationship. Because right from the start, I'm like, oh, this is an abusive relationship. And she killed him because he's abusive. And pretty early on, we learn there's an abusive fight. But we don't know who was the aggressor. We don't know who was abusive.
Yeah.
So it's really a tricky film. And I think that's what makes it really fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that whole fight, the recorded fight that he recorded on his computer, and you have to hear the long, uncomfortable audio of it and just imagine what's happening in your heads while everyone in the courtroom is imagining. Yeah, it is very intense and very uncomfortable. There's a lot of uncomfortable moments in this movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a really interesting choice in the filmmaking to show that argument visually up until the point that it turns violent.
Yes.
And then it cuts back to that wide shot of the courtroom where you just see everybody listening. So let's get real quick to, I don't know what the French legal whatever is for, reasonable doubt, whatever. But if you look at the court, if you just go from what's presented in that movie, there is no way, based on the evidence, you could possibly convict her. I mean, there's just too much up in the air.
Yeah.
And I do not believe that a woman her size, I mean, if you look at the two of them, he's clearly larger than she is. I don't know how she would have gotten a blunt object, hit him in the head, pushed him over the rail, and then gotten rid of the object. Like, I don't, that's crazy to me. I don't know. I also don't know how she would have stayed asleep during the music, which is...
Yeah. Oh my God. That was so loud in the beginning of the film.
Annoying.
It was like so hard to, it was like blaring through my sound bar and like destroying my ear.
Yeah. But the other reason I think that she's not guilty is because the movie's called Anatomy of a Fall. It's not called Anatomy of a Murder, Anatomy of Blunt Force Trauma to the Head. It's called Anatomy of a Fall, which I think is just not ambiguous. I don't know. I don't know if they intended it.
I think that is. I still think that's ambiguous.
Yeah, it's a fall. I mean,
Right,
it's also
he fell
not
from
called
the window,
Anatomy of
but
a
she
Jump.
could have pushed him.
But,
Yeah.
I also believe the idea that, the blood could have melted because of all the snow that was there and then run down the side of the mountain. Totally plausible.
Mm-hmm.
And she could have killed him, but I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I feel. Like, maybe she didn't. Maybe she did. I don't know, but...
Yeah. And what's really interesting is the kid is comfortable enough with his decision that let's just say his mom did murder his father. He's like, well, I still have one parent left and, I have this impairment, so I need someone around. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm leaning more towards, and this could be my own biases, but I'm leaning more towards she did it because I'm leaning more towards the fight turned abusive. And this is a really tragic thing to say, but it's very true that there are so many women who suffer from abuse in relationships, and a majority of, I don't want to say a majority because I don't have the stats in front of me, but a lot of women who are bisexual women face abuse from their partners. And so to me, it just seems like it fits very easily into that narrative. But again, that could just be a red herring. Like the whole, that could just be part of it where it seems like it's that way, but it's really not. But to me, that's why it seems like, oh, she's guilty. But if she is, I think, and if that is what happened, if he was, abusive in that fight, completely understandable.
Yeah.
I have another thing. I also think that whether she did it or not, she doesn't think she did. She doesn't think she did.
Ooh.
She's like, I may have pushed him out the window, but that's not
and
murder.
Like blacked out.
Totally.
Yeah.
Because he was an abusive fuck, and
right.
he's responsible. I was wondering how the thing with the son's accident was going to come into it, because I was like, oh, if the accident's like her fault, nope, it's the husband's fault. They took care of that really quickly. So, it's
for the reason why the son was blind,
right? So, I mean,
yeah.
Do
we feel so? I feel like throughout that fight, he's accusing her of being the abusive one and like being awful. Do we feel like it's pretty unambiguous that he for sure is the abusive one, regardless of whether we think that she did it?
Totally
Because
projected.
I know that's like textbook abuser, you know, gaslight the person, tell them they're doing all the things. Like I never for a minute felt like she was the one doing any of those things.
No.
Like I legitimately felt like this is a sad man who's disappointed with his own fucking life and his own fuck ups and his own ability to like do anything positive. That he is just laying all the blame at her feet, and she is not is not responsible for like any of the things he's blaming her for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact, I think the for me, what absolutely was what clinched that, like just sealed the deal on that he was the abusive one, is that how manipulative he is, and that he's blasting his music when he knows she's doing that interview. The fact that he's doing that, and he's intentionally doing that, that's extremely manipulative and extremely, emotionally abusive. And so, yeah, to me, I'm like, yep. And the fact that he recorded all these things, against her knowledge, like it's so weird. Like, anyway, yeah. So I think that too.
Yeah. This is incredibly cynical, but I almost think that he jumped out the window just so that she would have to spend the rest of her life in prison. Because he hated her that much. I mean, because that man was consumed with hatred.
He hated her. I mean, his therapist made that clear. It's just like the courtroom scenes that are just like, I can't even say dripping, because dripping is not a strong enough word for the amount of misogyny that's coursing through that courtroom between his therapist, the way he's laying blame and accusing her of all these nasty things, and the prosecutor.
Oh my God.
Good God, the way that guy was editorializing. Right? I could not believe some of the nasty shit he was saying to her and about
good lawyer,
her.
Though.
It was like...
Good lawyering.
Oh, disgusting.
Yeah,
and I was like, where do I know this guy from? Then I remembered he was in BPM. I was like, 120 BPM. I was like, oh yeah, that's where I remember him from.
Oh, that's why he looks familiar.
Yeah.
I've seen her lawyer before somewhere, but I couldn't tell you where. Oh well. He's very good. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. So, okay, so we have Megan thinking, yeah, she probably did it. I think, no, she didn't. Did you say which one you think, Evan?
I didn't, but I don't think she did it. I feel like I never got any real hints to me that she did it.
Yeah.
Like looking at what the scenes that we've seen, the lack of a better word, the evidence, because you was like, I'm thinking about this. You said reasonable doubt, Dave, and I'm just earlier this year, I served on a jury in an attempted murder trial, and it's reasonable doubt is important, and I feel like as someone who's been on a jury like recently ish, there's so much reasonable doubt in this case. I feel like, and there's no physical evidence tying her to the crime, right. So it's like. You just can't say that she's guilty, but that's just where I'm coming from.
Oh, I want to be very clear. If I was on a jury, I would absolutely say reasonable doubt. I would not be like, oh, she's guilty.
Yeah. I mean, even
I'm just talking about my own thought about this character. I think she did it. But no, on a jury, absolutely. The evidence is just not there.
Yeah, I feel the same way, even though I think that she didn't do it. If I was in that courtroom and like 11 of the, let's assume there's 12 jurors, 11 of the 12 jurors were like, she did it. I'll be like, I think she did it too, but I don't think they proved it. So.
Right, exactly.
So I got to say not guilty.
Yeah, it was especially convincing and disturbing to see that reenactment of the way his body fell.
I can't believe the kid was in the courtroom for that.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It was horrifying.
Yeah.
Like when we see the dummy outside her house, and then when we see it in the courtroom, like, geez.
Yeah. Their witness, the defense witness that did the dummy drop was, I thought, just funny. Like in a good, it's like the one moment of levity in that movie, and it's about a body falling out a window,
Yeah.
I'm just going to say really quickly that I actually thought I was really compelled by everything up until the courtroom stuff. And then when the courtroom stuff started, I was like, this is not so great. But then it got better. It like I feel like the courtroom stuff was kind of a slow burn because at first, Sandra's not really talking, and then she's like brought more into the stuff, and then her French not being perfect and having to speak in English. That was all just like every time that she started speaking, I was like, yeah, she's not speaking French. So yeah. So anyway, that's where I come down.
Yeah, I really love that this film is so exploring so many things. It's complex. It's intriguing. Yeah, I really dug this. I didn't find it slow. I loved the courtroom scenes. I loved the home scenes. I kind of loved all of it. I thought it was really, really compelling.
Yes, and I just want to go ahead and say on the record, since it's a courtroom movie, on the record that I think her husband was a miserable piece of shit. So, not that she was any saint, because who knows, really. But based on
I mean, she cheated on him.
Yeah, but I don't know.
I'm just saying she cheated on him. That's
right.
The one bad thing I could say about her.
Yeah. Oh my God, to be jealous of your spouse's success, your female spouse's success, and then just to like take that out on her. I just feel like that's classic dude 101. And when I say classic, I mean shitty classic.
Right. Classic that should not be.
All too predictable classics.
Hey.
Yeah. Anyway.
All right. Do we have any other thoughts? Anything else we want to discuss before we move on?
No, she's fatiguée. Thank you. No, I'm good.
Yes, I'm tired too, Dave. The only other thing I will say is that we got two really great French courtroom dramas this year. We got Saint Omer that we covered earlier this year, and Anatomy of a Fall. So, but yeah, I was happy to talk about this and I was really happy to talk about this with you guys because I was really curious what you both thought of this because you can interpret this in so many ways. Maybe not so many, but in a couple of ways.
It's interesting though that you bring up Saint Omer because I think that I remember watching the courtroom scenes in that and being like, man, these people are taking a lot of fucking, like, this is not how court works in the US, but it works the same way in Saint Omer that it does in Anatomy of a Fall. It's very similar. So I have to believe that it's a relatively, as far as movies go, it's a movie accurate portrayal of the French court system.
Yes, very interesting. All right, well, let's move on to our next film, which is All of Us Strangers, a fantasy romance written and directed by Andrew Haig that is based on the Japanese novel from, I believe, 1988 called Strangers. And it stars Andrew Scott, Paul Mescal, Jamie Bell, and Claire Foy. And this is another verbose synopsis from the press release.
All right.
One night in his near-empty tower block in London, in contemporary London, Adam has a chance encounter with a mysterious neighbor, Harry, which punctures the rhythm of his everyday life. As a relationship develops between them, Adam is preoccupied with memories of the past and finds himself drawn back to the suburban town where he grew up and the childhood home where his parents appear to be living just as they were on the day they died 30 years before. That is true.
Yes, that's accurate.
Yeah, those things happen.
Continues to go back to that home and visit his parents who look exactly the same as when they died 30 years before, and he catches them up on his current life.
Right. Yeah. They're aware that they're dead. That's not, it's not like they're just like wandering around like, thinking everything is normal. It's like they're aware they're dead. They know he's an adult now. They're not treating him like a kid. And they're like, hey, let's catch up. I want to hear about your life.
You know what I think is fascinating is that Jamie Bell and Claire Foy are like a decade younger than Andrew Scott, which I think is really great casting choice, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree with you.
Okay. I'm sorry. That's the first thing I noticed.
No.
Isn't Jamie Bell like only like 37? You know?
And he is, So Dave, since you started, what did you think of All of Us Strangers?
Well, I'm not sure I understood it entirely, but I will say that didn't stop me from bawling my eyes out.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, it's a real gut
the
punch
scene
of a
in
movie.
the pub where
Yes.
he's ordered the food and his parents have already decided that they're going to take their
Oh
leave
my
of him,
God.
but they haven't told him yet. I thought I was going to die from sadness. I mean,
Yeah.
and just to
It's
watch
sad.
Andrew Scott, lose them all over again. At least it gets, he gets to like lose them to their faces this time.
And to say goodbye, right?
But, when I didn't realize that his father is like going, and I was like, wait a minute. And then I'm like, whoa, he is. Hey. And then I thought that, the mother was going to be like, nah, I'll stay because dad went. And she's like, nah, I got to go too. And nobody ever says that. It's just like they're slipping away,
Right.
I had read that the Japanese movie version of this is actually a horror movie, which
Yes, it is.
surprises me. That source material, I haven't read the novel, obviously, could go in two such different directions, because this is very much a movie about grief and loss and longing, and and loneliness, and not a horror movie.
Severe loneliness. Yeah.
No, definitely not
Although
a horror movie. And that was an intentional choice by Andrew Haigh to not have it be a horror
is
movie.
the book a horror story? Do we know?
No, but it's more about the ghostly kind of elements, in that regard. He said in interviews that he wanted to deviate in that way, that he wanted to focus more on kind of unearthing grief and dealing with that. And it's he wanted to dig into his own personal story. And so a lot of it is very personal for him. And he said it was an extremely painful experience doing this movie because it delved into a lot of his own things, and the home that
I read this.
Andrew's parents,
home.
that's his childhood home, which is wild. So in that regard, it's different. So Andrew Haigh wanted to have kind of a more metaphysical. He said a metaphysical story rather than like a ghost story or a horror story. Yeah.
I mean, in a way, I don't know if it's pretty pronounced on the screen, but when you see Adam at the beginning writing the first scene for whatever screenplay he's working on, it says like exterior suburban home, and I think I can't remember if it says 1987 or if I'm making that up in my head, but it was like, oh, so this is what we're doing. Because I kind of knew what this is about a little bit.
Right.
And so he's constructed this, but I still think that his parents are there, that he's seeing them. I don't think that's in his head.
Yeah. No,
I don't think it is either. I mean, especially the way he tries to take Harry.
And Harry sees them. But was Harry already dead?
Parents.
I don't think so, because he was wearing a different sweater. So
he was.
Oh, he was already dead.
He was already dead.
He killed himself the first night that he showed up at Adam's store.
Oh, he did. That's
when he was
right.
drunk.
He overdosed.
Yep. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. So right, yeah. So that's what's wild is that he's alive when they meet, but then he's
from the night. That's interesting. Oh, I guess his parents are always wearing different clothes. It's not like okay.
Yeah.
I guess as ghosts you get to change your clothes.
Yeah. Talk about a gut punch reveal that
you're
Harry,
right.
this guy, Paul Mescal, that he's had this relationship with for this entire time. Turns out he killed himself the first night that they met because, Adam was like, I don't think I'm going to let you in. Like, you're kind of drunk. I don't know you. I feel kind of uncomfortable. And so
and he says, I really needed someone that night. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a devastating reveal. Were you guys surprised by that? I didn't know anything about this movie going in. I was like, whoa.
I was not surprised at all. I actually had an inkling before it.
When he saw the dead parents, I suspected like, oh, okay, that's definitely something important.
Yeah, I was like, if he's seeing dead people, I'm like, who else is he seeing that's dead? So, that's not definitively where thought the story was going, but I kind of had an inkling like something was awry. And yeah, so
I didn't think
it did not come as a shock, but it was still a gut punch nonetheless. It did not make that any less emotional when that reveal happened.
Obviously, I didn't think about it at all because I was sitting here,
crying too much.
Oh my God.
I was crying too. This movie, I was crying through most of it.
Yeah, it's a sad movie.
It really is.
Sad.
But it's beautiful.
It's so well done.
I think it's a beautiful, beautiful testament to love and to hope. And because Adam is really broken, and he's never dealt with the grief and the trauma of losing his parents at such a young age, and he's really isolated, like in this apartment complex. He's one of the only people, like he and Harry are pretty much like the only people who live in this apartment complex.
By the way, unless it's a brand new apartment complex that nobody lives in yet, which is possible. It is, but it is still weird nonetheless. But he's a screenwriter, so he's working from home, so he's really isolated himself, or just circumstances have kind of come that way where he's isolated and he's so lonely. And so to work through his grief and to get a chance to see his parents again and spend time with them. And the fact that he comes out to his parents, like that scene has haunted me for weeks after seeing this film. Like when the fact that Claire Foy, his mom, is not immediately supportive about him being gay. And she first just assumes heteronormatively that he's with a woman, and then when he comes out as gay, she's like, kind of not supportive because she's worried about HIV/AIDS, and she's worried about homophobia. And he's like, no, I'm good, I'm happy that I'm gay. And that was such a kind of revelatory scene to see someone who is so lonely but still very happy with who they are, and to kind of work through that, and then to see his father so accepting and like just emotionally embrace him for being gay, like it just was lovely. And so he gets to work through that, and how they're both encouraging him to pursue Harry and to go for love, and which is just so beautiful. So it is such a heartbreaking film, and it's so delicate and so gutting, but it's also such a beautiful, beautiful film about time and existence, and I just love it. But I love Andrew Haigh as a filmmaker. I love Lean on Pete. I think it's such a stunning, beautiful, lovely film. Also gutting. 45 Years I loved. The end, it's an ending that absolutely destroys me. And I had an argument with my stepmother who's like, that movie, nothing happens in it. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Everything happens in the last 30 seconds of that movie. And Looking is great. And he directed a bunch of episodes for that show. So I love his work. I think he is just an incredibly sensitive and exceptional filmmaker. Oh God, he did Lean on Pete? Oh
yes.
God.
Which is gutting. I love that movie, but it is so
only
wrenching.
Make sad movies? What the fuck? Now, I happen to have seen 45 Years.
I remember you talking about Lean on Pete.
I love Lean on Pete. That movie destroyed me.
I've seen 45 Years and I hated it. Hated it.
Oh, I loved it. Loved it.
Mostly because I thought every character in that movie was fucking horrible. But
yeah, you're not wrong necessarily.
But yeah, Lean on Pete is just like one tragedy after another. Oh, good God. Anyway.
And yet it never feels like tragedy porn.
True.
I think that's
what's
thing.
so amazing about this guy's movies is because you're watching this, All of Us Strangers, and it's like, I think in a lesser filmmaker's hands, it would just be, he'd be beating there'd be like languishing, as opposed to just profound sadness,
Yeah. And I think so much of that has to do with the performances. All the performances are excellent, but especially for me anyway, Andrew Scott, he was one of my favorite performances of this year. He's so incredible.
I wish I had seen this before we did our ballots, because I absolutely would have had him as one of my best actors, absolutely.
He was on mine. Yep. He was on mine.
This might have impacted my ballot. I mean, the cinematography in this movie is absolutely striking. It's so crisp in places that I was like, wow, I can't even believe how crisp this looks compared to other things that I've seen have looked muddy and just.
It's also just, I mean, this goes along with being crisp, I think, but it's just so precise. Like every camera movement has meaning.
Yes.
You know, like, oh my God, I don't know how they got, I mean, it must have been maybe computer, how they get Claire Foy and Jamie Bell out of the scene in the pub in time to have the server put down the 3, desserts and, come back up, and the desserts are in perfect, foreground. And then it goes to Andrew Scott in the background, and he realizes he's finally alone. I'm getting choked up.
Oh no.
Yeah.
It's so good though. That scene is so
muting
beautiful.
the mic for a moment.
It is.
Talk amongst yourselves.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I want to go back to Megan. You brought this up, and I think one of the things that really resonated for me in this movie is the juxtaposition of how both of his parents react to him coming out.
Yes.
The way you talked about his mom being uncomfortable about it, and she has, what they died in, what we presume sometime in the 80s or early 90s.
Yes. Yep.
She has a lot of those outmoded views that we now were like, okay, people got past a lot of those things that they thought about homosexuality at the time. And she is very uncomfortable to the point where he kind of like decides to leave after that because she's just made him feel like it's time for you to go. Like, I need to sit and deal with this. And the juxtaposition of how his dad reacts, and you mentioned it, that he's so supportive. But what I love about the movie is that it sets you up to maybe think that his dad won't be supportive.
Yeah.
Like, there's a scene when he initially sits down at the table with his parents and his dad is holding his hand, and he makes that comment to him, like, basically like, enough with the gay stuff of us holding hands. Like, so you think like, okay, this guy's going to be very old school, like homophobic, like macho guy.
Nope.
And to see that conversation with him, play out where he admits like, yeah, I probably, in your schoolmate's shoes, I probably would have picked on you. And like, I, always struggled with the fact that you were crying in your room. And I felt like if I went in there, I would have to confront why they were picking on you, and the fact that, my suspicions would be confirmed that you were gay, and I'd have to deal with that. And I just thought that scene was just so well done, the way that he is so introspective and is like, apologizes, like, I'm really sorry I never went into your room to check on you. I should have. And the scene ends with them crying, and Jamie Bell says to him, can I hug you? And I just think that scene is so beautiful. And it choked me up and hit me where it hurts. But I thought it was very well acted. It was well written. It was well performed. And it was just such a brilliant juxtaposition of how the two parents handled the situation so differently, in ways that I think were kind of unexpected, or at least not telegraphed based on what you saw about the characters earlier. That kind of like upended your expectations.
Right. I completely agree. And I think that lends it to feel more authentic. It feels more real, because in real life, people are complicated. People are contradictory. They're not always what they seem to be. And so I think that the film does that, where it sets you up, but then it's like, oh, it's not quite what you think. To me, it felt much more real in the way that it was executed. And I just think it's beautiful. And I think it's so lovely that he gets the opportunity to have these really difficult conversations with each of them.
Yeah.
Dave, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm all right. I just, yes, I'm not going to say much more while we're doing this, because I don't think I'm going to be able to keep it together. But
oh no,
yeah.
okay.
So muting again. Talk amongst yourselves again.
Yeah, I was like, I saw this a while ago, so I think that might be helping that kind of distance, because
the emotional distance of it.
Right. Yeah, the temporal distance is giving me some emotional distance, because Dave is absolutely right. His reaction is very much what my reaction was when I was watching this. Like, I was inconsolable. It is just it's such, I mean, it is such a sad movie, but it's so beautifully done. It's so delicately done. Dave, you had said it's done with intention, like in the cinematography, and it is. Everything is very intentional, and that it just comes together beautifully.
Yeah, well, there are two things I am going to say more because I can't shut up.
Yay!
Two things about it is watching people be sad on screen always makes me sad, so that's hard. And then the other thing is, you know, I just don't want to feel like I don't want to regret not talking to my kids about things or talking to them about things, you know, and you know, you don't really think about when you don't have children, or at least I didn't, all of the things that you think you did wrong and you know it immediately. You know, so, and you can only hope that your children remain as tenderhearted as they are now. So, any spray.
Well said.
Yeah,
I think that is the strength of this movie, is that it is tender is a perfect word. I think that encapsulates this film. It's an extremely tender.
It is interesting that
film.
As much as we do or don't know about Adam, he never seems to be coming from a place of anger or resentment, which is very interesting.
No, never. He always is extremely he has a gentleness to him. And yeah, I feel like in another character, or in a, you know, like you had said earlier, a lesser filmmaker, I think he would have been a character that was very bitter or very angry or very despondent. And even though he is very much mired in grief, and surrounded by loneliness and tragedy, he's not a bitter person. He very much moves through the world and his interactions with Harry and with others with a gentleness and with a curiosity and with a kindness that just emanates. And that's very lovely to see.
Yeah. And then the film ends with him and Harry laying in bed together and just kind of like, I don't know, cuddling into the cosmos.
Part of Orion's belt, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So does that mean that what happens to Adam? What's happened to him?
Yeah. Do you either of you feel like there's, I mean, obviously the film is commenting on a lot of things, like grief, trauma, loneliness. Do you feel like there's a central message or takeaway at the end? Or do you feel like it's just kind of like we've walked through these things with this character, he's been able to get some closure on at least the things that happened with his parents, and you know, he's had this relationship that's helped him kind of open him back up to the world, but you know, obviously he's immediately in mourning again because he lost the guy that he thought he had. But do you feel like there's like something that the film is trying to leave us with at the end there?
I do. I mean, I think you kind of you were kind of talking around it, and I think the takeaway is that love is healing, and that no matter how much time you get with someone is precious, and to savor that, but to be open to love and to let it transform you. So yeah, I think if there is a message to take away from it, which I think is a great question. Yeah, I think everything you said, Evan, is kind of part of the message, in that it's leading to that. But if you to boil it down to just one thing, not that needs to be done, but I would say it's, that love heals.
Or it takes you to the cosmos. I mean, one of the two. I mean, I think that, I don't know if it has a message other than half of Bill and Ted's message, which is be excellent to each other.
There we go. That's an important message.
Yeah, I don't think party on, dude.
I think this film would argue to party on.
Yeah.
I think this film would argue to party on, dude.
Hey, listen, there's that scene in the gay club is a great scene where they're dancing and having a beautiful time.
Yeah.
That's a historic queer nightclub too, by the way.
Which one is it?
Oh, cool.
I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, no,
I'm sorry,
fine.
I can't remember the name of it. But it's an actual queer like entertainment space and nightclub. it's been around since like, I think like 1910 or 1920s. It's been around like a really long time.
Yeah. Well, what I was going to say is, I don't know about messages, but I think that the ending, I wasn't sure what to make of it. And this is so corny, but I think that Adam might be taking Harry onto his next destination.
Oh, I love that.
And presumably Adam will return, because I think that Adam has, I refuse to believe that the end message is that Adam's reward for working through all of this trauma is that he's now dead because he goes with Harry.
Yeah, I don't believe that either.
So I think that it's just kind of like, I mean, celestial's not the right word for an ending, but because it doesn't
yeah, I think it's a
well,
celestial
it doesn't really
ending.
explain anything though, it's just like, well, we,
but does it have to explain anything?
It doesn't.
You know
it
what
doesn't.
I mean?
I think that I mean, as ambiguous as it seems, I think it's also pretty just Adam has transcended something. I think that's the message.
Yep.
I
agree with that too.
What happens to him next, I don't know. I mean, he should move somewhere in London where there are more people, I think. For no other reason than he can leave his home, and like maybe he knows the guy who runs the coffee shop down the street at least.
Yeah, it's a great point.
Yeah.
You're making me think about something though, Dave. I think, love is not finite, it's expansive. And I think the celestial kind of metaphysical ending arguably speaks to that, and I think it is intentionally open to interpretation. And so I think its ambiguity, I think, is its strength, in that you can look at it in a multitude of ways, which is lovely.
Yeah. Oh, poor Harry. Oh,
poor Harry, poor Adam.
I hadn't realized he died that first night. For some reason, I thought he died after which I is wrong now to hear you two describe it, but that he had died after he accompanied Adam to the house, but he was already dead. Oh well, man, went right over my head.
That's okay.
Yeah.
You were having an emotional experience.
What I thought was, when I saw, Harry dead, and dead now, this should have clued me in. He's clearly been dead for a while, because he smells, A, and B, you get like one indication of what kind of condition his body's in, and it's not good. So, and because the building is empty, it's one of those New York deaths where no one notices for 2 weeks until the smell drifts into the hallway, like in When Harry Met Sally.
Yeah.
So, but when he shows up in the apartment wearing the same clothes, I just assumed that it had happened recently, because Harry doesn't realize he's dead yet. Well, he does, but he doesn't. He confirms it. So,
I think when Harry says at the end, or near the end of the film, when he's like, I didn't want you to see me like that, or I didn't want you to go in there. Like, oh, that's so sad. So tragic.
Hey. Oh, and he picked.
Do we have any?
Adam
I'm sorry.
picks
Go
up
ahead.
the bottle
yes,
that he had brought over to his house, and then just refused to like drink with him. Ugh. Well, I think this is the first episode of Spoiler Piece where I've cried on mic. Only took 493.
It might be. You definitely gotten choked up before, but I don't think to this degree.
This is a really affecting movie. And also just because it's, so well done. Like, if this were, like we keep saying, in a lesser, I'd be like, fuck you, you're sad, whatever. Not this movie.
Yeah, spoiler alert for next week. This is on my top 10.
I just want to say, by the way, spoiler alert for next week. I didn't realize until after I sent in my ballot that I didn't fill out the international films part.
Whoopsies.
Because I was like, oh, all right.
Whoops daisies.
And then when I looked at because I clicked that message, that button that says, oh, please send me a copy of my ballot. So I looked at them reading. I'm like, wait a minute. I skipped the whole page. Oh, well. Talk about it next week.
It happens. All right. Do we have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Nah.
No.
All right. Well, Anatomy of a Fall I believe it's playing in theaters as well as you can rent it on VOD. And All of Us Strangers opens in theaters today, Friday the 22nd. And I think it's safe to say we would. Actually, I don't want to make that assumption. Would we all recommend Anatomy of a
Yes.
Fall?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay, yes, then I guess I could have made that assumption. And I think it is safe to say that the movie that made us all very emotional, All of Us Strangers, is a high recommendation from all three of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like keep a giant box of tissues or something nearby because be
You're
ready
gonna
for
need 'em.
this movie.
Yeah, you are.
Unless you're the most
And-
cynical
and if you-
person ever.
Whew, you'd have to be really cynical.
Yeah.
All right, but we want to give a huge thank you to our sponsor piece patron, Heather Sachs. Heather, thank you so much for your support.
Thank you.
Thanks, Heather.
And while we're doling out the thank yous, we want to give a huge thank you to our amazing editor, Otto Clamor. Otto, thank you so much for making us sound great week in and week
Thank
out.
you, Otto.
Thanks, Otto.
You can find Spoiler Piece anywhere you get podcasts, and you can find us on our website, spoilerpiece.com. If you like the show, please consider rating and reviewing us. That really helps us get the word out. You can go to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece. We'll take you to your preferred platform of choice. You can also go directly to our Apple Podcast page or our Spotify page and rate us there. That helps. If you really, really like the show, which we hope you do, consider becoming a patron. This week, we talked about some of our recommendations for TV shows and video games and such. And we put out weekly bonus episodes for $5 a month. You also get to vote in monthly polls. So if you are a patron, thank you so much. And if you're not a patron, consider joining. If you like the show and you want to show your support in another way, you can get our merch. If you go to our website, it will take you to our TeePublic store. You can get t-shirts and hoodies and tote bags, and it makes a great gift. And you can this is the gift giving season.
Yeah, God damn it.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can get a gift for somebody else, get a gift for yourself, treat yourself and rock some Spoiler Piece podcast merch. That'd be great. And also, if you like us, come follow us on social media. We're all over the place. We're at Spoiler Piece, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, Threads, TikTok. Have I forgot Blue Sky? No, not Blue Sky. Not there yet. We will be. Don't worry. Have I missed anything? I don't think so.
I think you covered it.
Okay. Well, we're all over the place at social media. So come follow us, come say hello. We love hearing from you. And speaking of, if you want to reach out to us, you can email us at spoilerpiece@gmail.com, or you can give us a call
at 862-21-PEACE.
Leave us a voicemail message, text us, let us know. What did you think of these movies? Are you so cynical you won't cry at a movie? I want to know. We want to know. I cry at the drop of a hat at a movie. And I think, Dave, you probably
I do too, but not quite like this,
Yeah, not like this. I've never seen this before. But yeah, so we want to hear from you. We love hearing your thoughts on movies. And if you have any questions for us, we love hearing them. So reach out to us, and you can reach out in a bunch of different ways. And that's it. My name is Megan Kearns. I write film reviews for Edge Media Network, co-host of the Slashers podcast. I am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and a member of Gallica. You can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at OpinionS World, or on Instagram and Letterboxd at The OpinionS.
My name is Dave Riedel. I write for the Chicago Reader. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, Threads, and Blue Sky as Dave Sees Movies or something similar.
And my name is Evan Crean. I'm co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living. You can follow me on social media as Real Recon, and that's real as in film reel.
And we will see you next time.
Bye, peeps.
Bye.